Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is Owen Medford, and today we are here to discuss the 2024 Mexico City Grand Prix. Joining me today, we have Grid Talk co-host and writer for F1 Chronicle, George Howson.
Good evening, Owain.
But before we get into the episode, we must thank our sponsor for this episode, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. With the largest catalogue of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, and political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on the game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online. The game starts here. And be sure to follow us on our social media at GridTalk UK. And if you're feeling extra generous, please consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind-the-scenes content. Now, just to get into the show, the races are coming thick and fast on the run into Abu Dhabi. I think it's something like, what is it, it's 5 in 8 or something, 5 in 7 races now. And after a thrilling sprint race at COTA, throwing a whole load of curveballs, can anyone make it a home run in Mexico is the real question. Just taking advantage of the fact that Mexico is apparently, baseball is one of their biggest sports, and obviously we do to have the literal stadium section. Now, George, I'm just going to start at the top with a team who's struggled of recent. You know, Max Verstappen hasn't won a race hasn't run a Grand Prix, sorry, in quite a while. There's something like 7 races or something like that, I think. But it seems that we've got kind of the old Red Bull back. They seem to have fixed up the car in some ways. You know, obviously there's a lot of scrutiny about the car right now with the bib height at the front of the car. Clearly the FIA is happy with it. And they seem to agree going back in the right direction and correlating things with their wind tunnel again, which is obviously good for them, and it showed in Austin. Do you think the Drivers' Championship is over, really, given this result? You know, it was kind of teetering on possible, but given this result, do you think it's gone now for McLaren and Lando Norris?
Not so sure about completely gone, but it is close to the final nail in the coffin, really. I think with that, like Lando Norris said, it really knocks the wind out of his sails, that result. He needed to gain significantly on Max Verstappen every single weekend, and he lost points, finishing behind him in the sprint race, and then also after the penalty was applied as well in the actual Grand Prix itself. So he's lost a decent amount of points there. I think he needs to make up an average of like 11 points per weekend now to take the championship, and that's bordering on Lando Norris winning every race and then Max Verstappen finishing either third or fourth, which I think is a really big ask at the moment. And not so much from Max Verstappen finishing so far down relatively, because given the pace of Ferrari, I think it's definitely possible. But for Lando Norris to win every race is a huge ask. It really, really is. You know, Max Verstappen hasn't won a Grand Prix race since Spain, and it seems as though Red Bull have got more on top of the car now. They seem like they've got it in a position where now Max is one of the fastest drivers and car combinations on the grid, or at least enough to get relatively consistent podiums, which is all that Max needs. That's all that Max needs. I say it's not over because we've still got 5 races to go, 5 Grand Prix races to go, that is, and 2 sprint races as well. A lot can happen in that time, and all it would take is for a retirement from Max, which, as we know, in places like Mexico, is definitely possible. We've seen some really big pile-ups into the first corner. It's a long, long run into that first corner. Although saying that, I've been looking up the stats as well for the Mexican Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen has won it 5 times. The most successful driver in the history of the event by far. So this is one of his best circuits we're coming to. So it's not quite over. It's not quite over yet, but I feel like it's gonna need at least one retirement from Verstappen and Norris to win 3 of the last 5 races, which, given the reliability of the Red Bull and given Lando Norris's pace right now, it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit like, yeah, McLaren sort of really need things to go. They need everything to go in their favour. They don't have I'd call it championships advantage. Sorry, champions advantage really, but it's not really. It's the fact that Red Bull did such good work in the early on in the season, as you say, that now Max Verstappen doesn't have to doesn't have to win every race. He can finish on the podium and just sort of slowly eke out the points advantage he's get, even if it's being eroded away. Yeah, to take him take him to that world championship. Now, one thing we did see in Mexico that sort of might make that job even harder for McLaren, and in some ways it's actually worse for Red Bull as well, is a 1-2 from Ferrari, something we've not seen in the USA, as you know, was said a number of times since 2006, I believe. It's one of those things, at least in the USA, but it seems like one of those things that we've not seen for 20 years is a 1-2 Ferrari win with two really good drivers. They absolutely blasted it. They use their tyre wear in a high tyre wear situation at COTA, and obviously that's worked out well for them. Now, Ferrari sort of peaked at certain strategic points, it would seem like, over this current year. You obviously got the win in Monza, for Charles Leclerc, which is obviously what they will want, I believe. Yeah, and that's obviously the one race you want to win as a Ferrari driver, including also your home race, which Leclerc also won. That's the other time that's come up. Now, given the sort of, I don't know, this momentum that they seem to have started to be picking back up on. Do you think Ferrari can maintain that, or what the odds do you think of Ferrari maintaining that to take second in the constructors' championship over Red Bull? Given that Perez, I don't want to harp on about him, but as much as he's going back towards where he should be, he's still not operating where he should be, and being along, Max would happen to wingman, I would say.
Yeah, he's not exactly wingman, is he? He is a long, long way behind. Maybe still even on the runway at this point relative to his teammate. I mean, it's definitely possible. This is I'm just looking up the previous winners of this event. Ferrari haven't won here since Alan Prost back in 1990. They haven't won in the modern era of the Mexican Grand Prix. But given the pace of the Ferrari, and you hesitate to really to write them off, or to B, say that, oh, they're going to keep going with this, because it's so topsy-turvy, it's so unpredictable. I mean, I said going into the summer break, with Mercedes winning, like, was it two of the three previous rounds, no, three of the four previous rounds before that, I said, oh, Mercedes, they could challenge for the Constructors' Championship maybe, and since then they've just completely fallen off a cliff. So it's hard to say for sure, but they were absolutely imperious around Austin, and you kind of alluded to a little bit there in terms of how Ferrari can do really well in this, because right now, I mean, it might not change the result of the race, given the pace of Leclerc, given the pace of Sainz. I don't know if it would have done, but it almost seemed as though, Red Bull could have kept Max Verstappen ahead of Carlos Sainz after the pit stop if they pitted him early, but they just seemed to give up on that and focus solely on Lando Norris, solely on the McLarens, which is obviously is their big battle. But as a team, their big battle right now is with Ferrari. There is 8 points between Red Bull and Ferrari. If we get a repeat, if anything like what we saw in Austin in Mexico, we're going to see Ferrari take second in the constructors, and that really does put Red Bull at a big disadvantage. I haven't looked this up, and I will look it up, but I don't know when a guy has won the Drivers' Championship and his team's finished third in the constructors. I'm willing to bet it's been a very long time. I'm sure people will boot up Wikipedia and look that up, and I'm going to do the same after this as well. But yeah, Ferrari absolutely, they can keep it going. They can keep it going, and they seem to race each other really well in the sprint. There was no team's orders there. Their pace there was fantastic. Their pace in the Grand Prix itself. I mean, Charles Leclerc won an absolute canter, a bit of a redemption arc, really, getting disqualified last year because of his plank wearing down, which I think stopped him getting a podium, or at least a finish in the top five, at least anyway. And to go and win like that was very, very impressive. And you never know, Leclerc, he could get second in the Drivers' Championship. He could pass Lando Norris as this goes on. So I think it absolutely can continue, but it's so hard to predict, because you've got three teams. I wouldn't put Mercedes quite in that bracket right now, but you've definitely got three teams that have real potential to win every single weekend. And as I know we're going to get onto, Mexico is such a unique circuit because of where it is, because of what the corners are like. We could see things flip on its head again.
Yeah, I think we normally will. I mean, one of the ways I always characterize Formula One is it always finds a way of raising the bar, and I feel like that's going to happen again, particularly with how, as you say, how close this championship has been, not just at the top, but all the way down, with how tumultuous it's been, just just the small, with the field being so close, just those small changes making a big difference. Hamilton going out, genuinely, Hamilton was knocked out of qualifying by I think it was a tenth of a second. So that tells you how much it, how small the difference is. Now, obviously, it looks spectacular and was shocking, but as you say, it's very very close, and it means that those small changes that do that used to not sort of change the order do make change the order quite a lot. And two teams who have fallen foul of that are McLaren and Mercedes. I have to say that very very carefully now. One is a McLaren Mercedes, but we saw them both falter a little bit. Maybe it was just due to the Ferrari's outstanding performance, but I think it's kind of clear to see at least Red Bull had that sort of redemption of being at least able in the sprint at least to for Verstappen to sort of not run away with it, but clearly quite clearly control that race for the entire length of it. Obviously the squabbling changed that a little bit in the Grand Prix, but McLaren not. But it looks like after the 4 week break, it sort of changed them a little bit, and again, Mercedes looks to be slightly more promising, but again fell backwards. Do you think they can turn that around in Mexico? Obviously, it's a very flat track, very high altitude track, which means you can run a lot of downforce without the penalty of so much drag. Obviously, that there is still that drag penalty, but it means that we see the highest speeds that we see on the calendar, and the track is odd in that it has mostly slow speed corners for the most part attached to long straights and not a lot of downforce, and it's also very very flat with very little camber. So it's a bit odd. Can they make anything of this situation, or are they destined to go a bit backwards in your opinion?
Well, with McLaren, I think I mean, I don't know what the overall noise was really going into the USGP. I personally was expecting them to do better than what they did. I kind of got the vibe from them that they knew pretty early on that they were probably going to be the third fastest team, and that's kind of what it looked like, given the position where the cars finished. But McLaren just seemed to have an absolute worldy weekend in them, particularly in the hands of Lando Norris. They can just turn up and win by 20, 30 seconds. They did that with Singapore. They did that in the Netherlands as well. They did that in Hungary too. And those tracks are all downforce tracks, all tracks where it's tricky to overtake. But Mexico is such a unique situation where you have Monaco level wings, but Monza level downforce being generated due to the thin air. So trying to predict it is so difficult. But with Mercedes, I mean, that car just looked so unstable. You had Sir Lewis crashing out after 3 laps, whatever it was, and the only guy not to finish the race. It was an embarrassing moment. But I think more embarrassing for the team than him because the car clearly was not stable. George Russell had a horrible crash in qualifying, and that's why he started all the way down where he did. Started from the pit lane, actually, indeed. And there is pace in that car, though. He passed Joe Perez in the closing stages, didn't he? George Russell. That car had excellent pace. It could really, really run well on its tyres for a long time, similar to how he initially won the Belgian Grand Prix before being disqualified, obviously. But he did one less stop and it paid off for him. He ran the hard tyres for an extremely long time at Kota, and it really paid off for him. They're just going to hope to start further up the grid and be able to, challenge the likes of Sergio Perez and maybe even mix it up with perhaps Piastri if he's struggling a little bit, Carlos Sainz, somebody like that. Yeah, it's not looking too amazing for Mercedes right now. They had a real peak in the midpoint of the season, like I said before, but now they just seem to be kind of trundling along. Obviously, well clear of anybody in the midfield. Aston Martin are like 300 points behind or whatever. It's an absolutely huge gap. There's no way they're going to catch Ferrari in third. They just seem to be kind of coasting towards the end of the season, which I think is a bit sad, really, given that, Lewis Hamilton's having his last season at the team after 12 seasons in total. Nobody's driven more races for one team in Formula One than Lewis Hamilton has for Mercedes. So, unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to be proven wrong. I hope I am proven wrong, but it seemed like Mercedes are going to end this 2024 season on a bit of a damp squib, really.
Yeah, that is frustrating for a team that we know can do so well, but it seems that I'm of the opinion that they haven't got on top of these regulations as best they want to, and I don't think anything sort of meaningful is going to get done before 2026 generally. So I don't think we're going to see a lot out of them. And we know they can do it. Unfortunately, I think they've lost lot of people who were poached, and that just takes it a little bit away. And they made a misstep after 2021, and that seems to have sealed their fate. They really need to do a 5-star job on it. if you're enjoying this podcast, perhaps you could take five, take five to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a five star review on Apple Podcasts if you think we're doing a 5-star job. Maybe with that segue. If you're one of the 72% of people who are not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like and subscribe. That helps us with the great god algorithm. Yeah, please, everything helps. Even comments, discuss what we've had to say. Do you think Mercedes have missed the ball, or do you reckon their new driver lineup is going to be outstanding coming up in 2025? We could be wrong, but no. Back to the show content. Yeah, the other teams who sort of don't have a sealed fate are Haas and RB or VCarb or whatever. Yeah, 38 and 36 points between them. Now, it's kind of, what with Liam Lawson having a really great run in only his first race, well, his first race back, their first point in 5 races for VCarb, that was. And Hulkenberg for Haas and Magnussen, to give him credit where it's due, also has been doing really great. Now, this sort of a battle I hope takes us to the very end, because it's we've got a couple of battles right down the field, and this is one of the ones I'm more interested in, because we've sat there and we've criticised Haas for many years, but it seems like Haas, not off the back of this investment or deal with Toyota, but they seem to be, Toyota seems to see what has been coming about for the last sort of 6 months, maybe, is that Haas are coming back and do seem to be quite performant, to the point where they might actually steal the midway through the constructors table ahead of a team which has some very promising talents in, but is tumultuous in VCarb. How do you sort of see this battle playing out? This next sort of battleground of it, we'll call it, in Mexico, George? Because looking at the two cars, in some ways they're evenly matched. I mean, it's power dependent, in my opinion. The Ferrari is obviously one of the more powerful engines on the grid, but then again, we've seen that the Honda powertrain, or the RB powertrain engine, does seem to also work very well in high altitude settings.
It's a fascinating battle between these two. It's changed hands so many times throughout this season. And, despite what Gunter Steiner says, I think Ayo Komatsu has to take pretty much all of the credit when it comes to organizing that team. Because you're right, we have absolutely lambasted Haas for a long time, and rightfully so. They have been the worst car on the grid in most of the last 4 or 5 seasons. But this season, they've absolutely turned it around. They've got the same drivers as before. That's not the thing that's changed. What's changed is that it's just a better car, a more consistent car. Double points in the sprint. Hulkenberg getting, I think he was seventh in the end, wasn't he? He was well up the order. An excellent job by him in the end. Eighth, my apologies with that. But, Kevin Magnussen as well, also getting really close to the points. He was quite unlucky. He seemed to pit at the wrong time, get caught in a bit of traffic, and got overtook by a few of the guys stopping later as well because of that. So yeah, that ASCAR is absolutely decent. How they're going to get on in Mexico is another matter. From memory, I don't think this is the best track for them historically, but if they're going to go qualifying and get up there during the race, do a one stop when other teams are doing a two stop, perhaps they've got every chance. And RB is also battling for those points too. It seems as though Aston Martin in fifth at the moment, not really good enough to score any points. So the last pickings of the points, the nines, the tenths, the eighths, they seem, to the most part, they are going to be taken up by the Haas and by the RB. RB, of course, when they were AlphaTauri last season, had a freak qualifying in the hands of Daniel Ricciardo. I think he qualified like fourth or something crazy like that. Ended up seventh after the race. It was a huge points haul. If Liam Lawson can summon that or anything like that, which given the pace that he had. Sure. I mean, someone said, as you know, I do videos for the F1 Chronicle, and someone said to me, oh, it's very unlikely that Lawson's going to get points from that, mate. He's got 60 places of grid penalties. He did, though. He absolutely did. And to be honest, when I said it, I thought, actually, that's a dumb move. He's starting from the back. There's no way he's getting points, but he did it. He drove absolutely magnificently. His first Grand Prix for a year. He's never driven the Circuit of the Americas in anger before that weekend. It's just one weekend. You don't want to get too carried away with it. You don't want to put him into the Red Bull straight away off of that. But it's an incredibly promising start and a clear kind of boost that they need. Similar to what Williams have done with Colapinto. It's a real boost that RB need to try and get them up ahead in the constructors. It's going to be fascinating with these guys. Of course, the Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren battle, that is the main one in the constructors. But this one as well, this one is really, really close. And these small points matter. They really do to these teams. So I'm going to sit firmly on the fence. I don't know how this is going to go between these two teams, but I'm going to look forward to watching it.
Yeah, clearly you're gonna go vote for entertainment. Is gonna win out.
We're all winners.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you could tell Akamatsu that we're all winning. He's sitting there with not as much money on the budget cap and trying to work out a technology share and somehow not giving any intellectual property between Ferrari and Toyota. I wouldn't want that job. Now we'll round out the sort of the biggest, well, not the biggest battle, but the last of the big battles down the grid. Now Williams have been fairly strong recently. They've picked up their points finishes. Ever since, honestly, unfortunately, since Logan Sargent left, we've seen an uptick in form. Albon has been doing pretty great. A small, actually, quite a big falter from him in Kota. I don't know if there was anything sort of hampering him. But an uncharacteristically low result for Albon, given his results in the last few races. But given that Colapinto, his personal views aside, given that his sort of his racecraft, you said when you interviewed him sort of earlier this year, he might have not been so polished, but he's doing some, his attacking style of racing seems to be working out for him. Collecting points, overtaking loads of people off the start in Singapore, even though Alpine have had an upgrade that seemed to be slightly helping them in their, slightly walking them slightly further back up the grid. But we're crucially going I believe it's eighth place. Do you think that the sort of the strong Williams performance, the fact that their car is incredibly efficient in a straight line, or when you wind the downforce off, do you think that they can put the Alpine challenge to bed in Mexico, or is this one that's sort of a bit more likely to rumble on?
I think it's going to rumble on just because the points that these guys are getting are relatively small. You're going to see Williams maybe get a 10th place or something like that, or Alpine getting a 10th place. There's 4 points between them currently. 17 for Williams, 13 for Alpine. Very unlucky for them because it looked as though Pierre Gasly was going to get a really, really strong finish during the USGP. But unfortunately, again, a guy who stopped, got in traffic, lost all his pace. His car just did not perform on the hard tyres, ended up finishing outside the points, all while Franco Colapinto ghosted into the top 10 and got a huge point for Williams. Now, he has been a real revelation for them. He really has, But yeah, he wasn't the most polished, like you said when I interviewed him, but, he's like 20 years old or whatever, so it is what it is. It was a great interview. Go watch it on the F1 Chronicle if you want to check out the 5 minutes with.
The promos later, George.
Hey, you mentioned it. I wasn't going to say anything. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this goes. I mean, bit of British bias in there, I'm sure, what I'm about to say, but I do back Williams to get it because, if Alpine are going to get points, they would have got them in the US. It was a really bad weekend for them in the end, unfortunately for them. And with Williams as well, you've got the highest speed track of the season in terms of a specific point on the track in Mexico. You've got Qatar, which is a really high speed track. Las Vegas is a high speed track. Abu Dhabi these days as well is a pretty high speed track. So, Brazil and Mexico perhaps are probably the trickier of the races that are left, but I'm backing Williams to get some good points. I really am. And like we kind of touched on as well, there's an argument to be made that Colapinto's kind of showing Albon up a bit, which is really that seemed like it'd be unthinkable, really, with how much he was really wiping the floor with Logan Sargent. Yes, it's Logan Sargent, of course, but Colapinto's a rookie. He was competing in Formula Two in before the Dutch Grand Prix. So yeah, I'll be fascinated to see how it goes. I'm backing Williams. I'm not sitting on the fence for this one. I'm putting it all in on Williams for this one. I think they're going to get that eighth place, which is massive for them. You look at the investment and the facilities comparison between Williams and Alpine. You got the French national team effectively up against a relatively plucky British team by F1 standards anyway. So I think it'd be a great story if they managed to do it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Personally, I think. Yeah, no, but personally, I think the Alpine is. I think that there's a certain amount of it where it seems tumultuous over there at Enstone and at Viry. Clearly, very, very much so, and I think that doesn't help you with good performances. You're having to go over and above to pull that out of the bag. Unfortunately they put the wrong strategy really in Kota, and it didn't work out for them. But yeah, that is sort of that's what we think are the main stories going into the next Grand Prix weekend. And with that, all that said, I'd like George to get your predictions for who's going to be on pole, and then we'll do the podiums just in a sec. But who do you think will take pole this weekend?
I'm going to go with my man Charles Leclerc. I think he's going to get pole. The guy is riding the crest of a confidence wave right now, and I think he'll do very well in qualifying.
Interesting, interesting. I'm not going to go with Charles Leclerc. I'm going to go with Oscar Piastri.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I think Piastri is a faster qualifier than Norris, and I think there's maybe less of the sort of what's the word? There's I don't know. There's sort of less of the things to upset the McLaren at Mexico, and what with
Hmm.
it being it's just so flat as a track, and it's high speed, and that's where the McLaren does, it's high speed corners in that last sector, and that's where the McLaren does benefit. Now, who's your podium? Get off the back of that pole position.
Yeah, this is the thing. I really don't know what to go with in terms of my head or my heart with this one. I'm hoping for a better weekend for McLaren. I'll go for it. I'll go for it. I'll go for Lando Norris to win. I will go for Charles Leclerc in second, and I'll go for Max Verstappen in third.
Interesting, interesting. I wouldn't go for that myself.
Go on
No, no,
then.
I'm going to go Piastri for the win. I'm going to go with Max Verstappen for second. And I'm going to go Lando Norris third, I think.
We get spicy between those two.
Basically, I don't think Ferrari's going to be on the podium.
Well, one of us is bound to be right, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, we've spread the bet. It's all good. What's your bold prediction? That's what I want to know. You got one?
Yeah, I could think. I'm trying to think of a good one. Trying to think of a good one. I would say I'm gonna go with. I don't even think this is gonna happen, but I'm gonna go with Aston Martin for the points, the top 10, because they've been so bad recently. I feel like constitutes a bold prediction, and we've seen Alonso put in some very aggressive drives over the years in New Mexico. So
Yeah,
let's go.
13th and 15th place for Aston Martin. They found themselves in a good place in fifth in the championship because there's no one that can beat them. They've done their work early.
Yeah.
Honestly, they should genuinely just go on to next year's car. Genuinely think about. I think that should happen. And what I think will happen is I think there's going to be clear daylight between Liam Lawson and Perez in the finishing order. I think Liam Lawson is going to be not just ahead, as in Perez is just behind, but I think there's going to be another driver in between them. I've probably
Home
explained.
crowd will love that.
Yeah, well, I'm just writing the script, except it's a knife and it's twisted into Perez's job prospects for next year. I'm a terrible person. If you'd like to hear how wrong I am in a week's time, or sorry, in a few days' time, then make sure you listen to Grid Talk. We are available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and the race results. Thank you very much to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. And if you want to support the show further, why not sign up to our Patreon for exclusive content? Also, make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released, and we will be back soon with plenty of more F1 content. If you're still struggling though, George, where can we find you? Where can you've said that you're a writer for the F1 Chronicle and you do a few videos here and there. Where can we find that?
Yeah, just one or two of them. Yeah. Thank you, Owain. As you may have heard during this broadcast, I also do videos for the F1 Chronicle. We basically cover anything to do with Formula One. You can find us on YouTube, where we've just passed 4,000 subscribers now, which is just absolutely manic. I can't believe how quick it is growing on there, to be honest. So thank you all for the support on there. You can also find us on Microsoft Start, as well as the usual social medias: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Substack as well. Got quite a bit of content on there as well. But yeah, probably a few that I'm missing off too. But also do videos for other sports as well, such as football, other general kind of motorsports on motoring, as well as NASCAR and IndyCar for those that are into your American sports. But yeah, thanks for having us on, Wayne. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. It's always great to have you on. It's always great to talk to you. If you'd like to keep up with the show, even during the races on occasion, or when there's just breaking news that happens during the week, and you want to hear from Grid Talk, you want to talk to us here, then make sure you get God, what's the word? Make sure you follow us on our social channels at Grid Talk UK, and that's where you'll on all the social media services with the app. That's Instagram, that's Threads. Those are the only two I can think of that are worth going on, in my opinion. But yeah, make sure you interact with the show that way and keep up to date on Grid Talk. Thank you very much for listening to Grid Talk podcast presented by Bet Online, and goodbye.